Hey, everybody, it's Bunny Pounds, the president of Christians Engaged, and I am so crazy excited. If you can see right now, I'm in a new production studio. Like, we are revamping our podcast for a national audience. Christians Engaged is going national, guys. We have been Texas focused. We have been in 69 churches so far in Texas, partnering with pastors around the state to help them and help people move through prayer, voting, and engagement for the sake of our country. We are now launching with an incredible team in Pennsylvania. We are going to March for Life. We'll be there in D.C. this year. I'm going to Florida this week. It's exciting what God's doing on the national framework. So we felt like, we need to launch Conversations with Christians Engaged for a national audience in a new studio. So I'm really excited that you can see us, and we are looking even better than before. With that, we are relaunching our book club for a national audience, and I am really excited. We studied some incredible books in 2021, whether it was biographies, books on prayer. My friend Corey Russell's Teach Us to Pray. We studied Eric Metaxas's new book on Is Atheism Dead? We read, we Love Your Enemies by Arthur Brooks. I mean, we just hit the gamut of books. Well, this year we're doing it again. We're reading biographies, books on prayer, books on civic duties, books on America. We might hit a David Barton history book this year, book on Israel. Who knows what we're going to hit with the book club this year? But we're starting this year in January with an incredible book. I saw a Facebook post of one of my favorite worship leaders, Justin Rizzo, a few weeks ago, and he was talking about his book, Empty Rooms. And the book's called Empty Rooms, Coming Alive Through Silence, Solitude, and the Secret Place. Here's the book for those of y'all watching on video. And I grabbed this book on Amazon and I consumed it in just a few days. It's so well written. Justin, if you guys do not know Justin, he has been a worship leader at the International House of Prayer in Kansas City for a long, long time. I think he started leading worship when he was 12, has led worship over 10,000 hours. Just let that hit you for a second. 10,000 hours, not just in church services and conferences, but many times with very few people in a room, in a prayer room, before the Lord, as he talks about in this book, in the audience of one. And he currently lives in Kansas City, Missouri with his family. Justin, I am so excited to have you today. Welcome, brother.
Thank you so much. So good to be here.
Woohoo! Well, start out and tell everybody a little bit about your journey. I know you come from a Christian family, but we're going to talk about in this episode about prayer and the secret place and quiet and solitude and how to walk with God. But how did you start in this journey of walking with God?
Yeah, totally. So I grew up in Buffalo, New York, and my parents were pastors and worship leaders my whole life growing up. Was saved when I was 7, said the prayer. But, I always tell people that kind of my relationship with Jesus began when I was 12. My dad came to me with a nylon string classical guitar, and said, hey, I want to teach you how to play the guitar, which I didn't quite appreciate what he was doing at the time. But it was through that experience of learning to play the guitar that kind of Justin's relationship with Jesus really began to be solidified. It wasn't my parents' thing. It wasn't just a religious thing. It was actually a relationship that began. And it was through music, through singing songs, through writing songs, through singing the Bible in my bedroom, all through my teenage years. I didn't really know fully what I was doing, but it was beautiful. Kind of that, first love was awakened. Was an entrepreneur all through high school. So though I loved ministry, I loved worship, I thought I would have more of a business path. My first business was a failed greeting cards business at the age of 12. I printed out all these 8.5 by 11 greeting cards and no one bought them at my church. So I had to go out of business, but I always loved making money and, I wanted to fund God's kingdom in that way. But when I was 16, I heard of this place in Kansas City called the International House of Prayer. through a man named Bob Sorge. I'm sure a lot of you guys know Bob Sorge. If you don't know Bob Sorge, go Google that name and buy up all of his books and listen to his YouTube videos.
Incredible
Yeah,
books, Bob writes.
amazing.
Yes.
But yeah, so he told me about it. So I checked it out my senior year, and I moved here in January 2004, at the age of 18.
Well, and tell people what you're doing now. You're training worship leaders. You've got a whole online school. I mean, what does your day-to-day life look like before we get into the book?
Yeah. So I've been on full-time staff here at IHOP for 18 years, and I continue to be on full-time staff. I'm on faculty at our university. And along with, leading worship, I also do a lot of online training of worship leaders. So kind of my flagship program is the Worship Leader Academy. It's where I really come alongside worship leaders for 6 months, not only with training, because in this day and age, I mean, like TikTok videos, YouTube videos, like training is just like everywhere, right?
Right.
So I really have a heart to not only provide awesome training, and there's kind of like a three-part framework that I walk worship leaders through of how to succeed on and off the platform for the long haul. So I teach on that, but what really sets the Worship Leader Academy apart is that all of my clients have unlimited personal one-on-one access to me for coaching for the entire 6 months. So I'm literally getting in the trenches with worship leaders in China, Singapore, Hong Kong, South Africa, Switzerland, here in the States, Canada, Mexico, Egypt, wherever it is, and talking to them near daily on things in their personal life, their team life, pastoral issues, worship team issues, whatever it is. So really have a heart to serve worship leaders and to see them thrive with Jesus on and off the platform. And then kind of another part of what I do along with leading worship and doing the discipleship is some creative art stuff. So I have a production company that we do films and musicals. And so I'm writing musicals, producing musicals. We just filmed our first musical this past fall. It's going to be premiering March 18th. If you don't like musicals, then don't zone out everything I'm about to say. But if you do like musicals, you want to check out a film based on John the Beloved's life. He's 90 on the island of Patmos. Go to FromPatmos.com. March 18th, this film is premiering worldwide.
Wow, that's exciting. And I've listened to some of your musical scores before, and you're amazing on that. So I'm just well-rounded on music and worship, and that's what discipleship and mentorship is all about, brother. So it's exciting. Well, let's get into this book because we're in January, first week of January, right? And if you go to a praying church, hopefully you're doing some praying and fasting, right? Right now. If you don't go to a praying church, you need to find a praying church, right? Because that's one of the main things we should be doing as the body of Christ, which is spending time with the Lord and, partnering with him in the place of prayer. You wrote this book, Empty Rooms, about silence, solitude, in the secret place. And this is the biggest need in people's souls right now, Justin. Is there's so much noise, there's so many distractions, there's so much on social media, news. The people we fellowship with and feed off this ministry are, either political activists, elected officials, candidates, people that pray about what's happening in America. There's so much going on. How do we drill down and quiet our soul?
Yeah, I think one of the main things that I always recommend, whether it's someone that I'm coaching or working with, or whoever it is to be in the scriptures, in the Word, because to tell someone, "Hey, go pray, go be with Jesus," it's like, awesome.
Right.
What does that mean? What does that look like? Because when I go out for coffee with a friend, I pick the coffee shop, I drive there, I see them face to face, we have conversation. That's what a relationship looks like. And what I think a lot of people don't realize is that our conversation piece is this book. It's the Bible. And it's not just, I want this, I want this, I want this, help my grandmother, feel better, though I love prayer lists, but it comes down to the scriptures. And so when you draw away, as kind of the foundation of this book is Matthew chapter 6, where Jesus says, "Hey, when you pray, here's what I want you to do." And shockingly, he doesn't say, go to the house of prayer down the road, or go find my house, which shall be called a house of prayer. He doesn't say that. He says, when you pray, go into your room, shut the door, And there's an amazing promise where your Father's waiting to meet with you in secret. But when I go in my room and shut the door, ain't nobody in there that I can see, So the conversation piece must start with the Bible. And this book, really unpacks, how do you do that? How do you pray the word? How do you dig into the scriptures and feed your own soul in conversation with Jesus?
Well, I think that's the biggest thing I hear from people is, I don't know what to pray. I don't know how to talk to God. And that's what you bring up so great in this book is these apostolic prayers, the book of John, the Psalms, all of these are in here to give us language to pray to the Lord. We're actually doing a Bible study through the book of Psalms. I can't believe I did 50 Psalms last year. We're on, Psalms 51 and 52 this week, but just to dig in and meditate and chew over those scriptures and then to pray those to the Lord, how does that change us day to day, Justin? When you're doing that, it seems so dry many times, so mundane. How have you seen the fruit of that in your own life, in your own family?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really, this chorus came out in a set I did probably over 10 years ago here at the House of Prayer, just spontaneously. It's the living word touching the living God inside of me. My heart shall live abundantly as I faithfully speak your word. And man, I cannot tell you in this short amount of time how my life has been changed, how it's affected my marriage, how it's affected me as a dad, as a friend, as a lover of Jesus. And you're right, you hit the nail on the head. A lot of times it is dry and mundane. But what's beautiful about it is that, using the example of marriage, for example, like you're not always going to feel the warm and fuzzies with your spouse, but as you continue to be faithful in that relationship and having conversation and loving one another, as you assess your life in decades, as I believe God does with us, you look at the book of Hebrews and he says, Abraham did not waver in his faith. And I'm like, no, he sure did. Like I saw him like disobey. He wavered in his faith. Like, what are you talking about? And I think the Lord, he doesn't look at the one day. He looks at, is Justin seeking to love me in the secret place through decades? And I think that's something that can be hard for this generation to grasp sometimes, because we are the McDonald's, the 24/7 Walmart generation. We want things quick. But when we have that kind of long-term vision of friendship with Jesus, your life is just going to be changed. And so, to put into words of how my life has changed I don't have enough time in every aspect. The way that I feel like the DNA, some Carolyn Leaf all up in here, the rewiring of my brain has happened, but it didn't feel awesome in the moment. But it's the same thing for going to the gym. Like I typically don't enjoy going to the gym, but the effects of the gym over months, I enjoy because I'm healthy. I feel better,
Well, that's so important for this generation. I know we have a mutual friend, Corey Russell. And Corey, when I started reading his books and listening to him about 6 or 7, 8 years ago, he set that vision in my heart, which is I want to be that 80-year-old on my East Texas ranch, bass fishing with my Bible open, with tears running down my face, still in love with Jesus, way after the point that nobody cares what I have to say anymore, right?
Yeah.
And that vision casting is so important. What are some of the elements for people to help them build a vibrant prayer life? I know one of them is actually scheduling prayer, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are some practical things you say, if you're going to fit prayer in your life, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think scheduling it is great. I think getting a friend to hold you accountable to it, not in some weird, daily sort of way, like, hey, are you praying right now? But a friend where on the weekly, on the monthly, you're going to check in and be like, hey, how is your prayer time going? And someone who can be honest with when your prayer time goes horrible and you didn't do it for a week straight or whatever it is. So scheduling it out, getting a friend to be accountable with on that. I think learning how to pray the Bible is one of the greatest things, because again, so this is something that Corey Russell says all the time, that your words are the most powerful words in your life.
When you
it's
hear
not your
it
friend's
out of your own
words.
mouth. Yes.
Yeah, your own mouth. It's not some politician's words or some famous person who says something awesome about you. It's your words. And when your words are his words from the scriptures, you're going to find life, and that's going to send you back to the place of prayer. They say it takes 21 to 28 days to make a habit. So you want to set some good foundations for your habit that will keep you coming back, time after time. And I think a real practical example of how to pray the scriptures is Psalm 23. I'll just use that example because we all know it. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, right? Verse 1. So how do you pray that verse? You can just do the whole thing. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. You could pray that for decades. I mean, you could just, bask in that, right?
Right.
But what I really recommend and encourage people to do is to break it down into smaller, easily digestible portions. So instead of the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, that's too large. The Lord is my shepherd, I think, is even too large. The Lord. You are the Lord. So when you come to your prayer time, just take one little, we call it an isolated phrase here at the House of Prayer. It's something that we do on our sets here on stage, but I do it in my personal life. So when I come to pray, I just focus on those two words, the Lord. Ask questions about it, declare things about it, intercede about it, be honest with God about it. You might be like, okay, that weird guy from Kansas City said to pray the Lord. It's super annoying. And then a thought will come to you and you're like, well, you're not the Lord of my thought life. Lord, I just declare you are the Lord of my thought life. So we're not talking about him being your shepherd or anything yet. We're just focusing on that one little phrase. And there might be life on it for 30 seconds or 30 minutes. Then go to the second phrase, is my shepherd. And I tell you, him being your shepherd is going to mean a whole lot more because you went so deep in that one phrase, you are the Lord, and so on and so forth. So just getting practical with it and not just like, and I love Bible reading programs, pray the Bible in a year or read the Bible in a year. But how about like meditate on one Psalm for a year? That's more, I think, what the vein that I typically am in.
That is such a powerful thing because people just speed read through the Bible, right? And they're not letting God change their heart with the words. I remember going to Psalm 23, one of the phrases that had really impacted me after I ran for Congress, which was a whole season of craziness, raising $1 million, running around 7 counties. But the one that was like, he makes me to lie down in green pastures, right? He restores my soul. And I just kept praying, God, make me lie down in green pastures. Restore my soul. Prepare a table for me in the presence of my enemies. God, there's a table laid out for me. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about meditating and mulling this over and making it part of your story and your life with God. It's so powerful. You talk about in your book, being alone is solitude. Feeling alone is loneliness. They're not one and the same.
Yeah.
Are you an introvert or an extrovert, Justin? I'm definitely an extrovert that has to pull myself to be in solitude, but I feel the fruit of it and the rewards of it if I do it. Talk about the benefits of solitude and what the difference is between being alone and being with God.
Yeah, the despair that can come in that feeling of loneliness is like, and you might experience that when you lose a loved one or something of that nature, and that's real. But so many times when I'm discipling someone or coaching someone or teaching on prayer, I have to make the distinction that just because the room looks empty doesn't mean that it is. And the promise of Scripture is that the Lord says, when you go into your room, your Father is waiting to meet with you in secret. So the loneliness that the enemy would say, or our culture would say, oh, you're lonely, oh, you need whatever. God's like, no, you're never alone. In this place of solitude, in the place of abiding in the vine, you're connected. Like you're up in there. You're not like this separate tree over here, this separate thing doing your own little thing over there. And so I think it's really, really important. And it's never been harder. I know we've said that already, but just to isolate that, in this social media driven culture, it's never been harder to convince someone of the beauty of solitude. It's never been harder to convince a young person that going into an empty space, going into the prayer room here in Kansas City, which is right down the road from my house, and leading worship for 2 hours from 6 to 8 a.m. on Saturday with no one in the room has any value whatsoever in the spirit, in your own life. Like, what are you doing with your life? You're a waste, you know? And to answer your final question, yes, I am an introvert. My wife calls me a trained extrovert. Because when you lead teams and you work with people, you gotta be, out there.
But you'd rather be alone. I love being with people, right? And it's so, but I realize eventually I hit this wall, like this emotional
Mhm.
wall that, oh, I am exhausted right now. And I
Yeah.
realize I need Jesus
Yeah.
and I need solitude and I need quiet. When I ran for Congress, I know we don't know each other very well, but I ran for Congress, messed up my vocal cords during the process after 6
Mm.
months of, raising $1 million and speaking over 7 counties and all this crazy stuff. And I had to do a silent fast because
Ooh,
my vocal cords were all messed up. I don't know if you've ever done that as a singer, but
no.
5 days I had to go without talking. Changed my life, friend.
Wow.
Changed my life. That's how
Wow.
Christians Engaged was born, is because sat there with my Bible on my couch and read a book called The Evangelicals, a history of the evangelical church throughout American history, that God planted the vision for this mission. But anyway, I digress. Okay, so 10,000 hours of worship, many, like you said, in small groups in a prayer room. What do you, when you go to that prayer room, or you're in your closet, or you're motivating a young person to spend time with the Lord, how do you think, I mean, you talked about the Father already, but do you think about the throne? How do you visualize that you're before the presence of God? How do you make that leap? Because we feel like we're just mere mortals walking around on the earth,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. For me, and this might sound a little bit unique or weird, but I like to think of angels in the room.
It's good.
Um, and then I primarily think of God, the whole, like, do you picture God on his throne, which he is, or do you picture God on the throne of your heart, like a burning fire, which he is? I'm more of a internal type of guy. Like, he is here with me right now. Christ in me, the hope of glory, the very seed of God is in there. And he's bought a bunch of friends in the angelic. I'm not a seer. I'm not whatever. I've never seen an angel. But that just brings comfort to my soul. And so that's typically what I picture.
That's so good. That's so good. So, w- the secret place sounds so mysterious, right?
Mhm.
It's so spiritual. Let's go to the secret place. He who dwells with in the secret place will have safety, right? Psalms 130, Psalms 91. How do you describe the secret place, and what is that, and how do we get to it?
Yeah, great question. And I think for me, and I do talk about this in a book a little bit, like, it doesn't have to be even the Matthew 6 empty, truly empty room. Like, I've been in airports where I have literally gone to the secret place with hundreds of people passing by me, stressed out, shouting, McDonald's burger patties flying everywhere, or whatever. So I think it's in your mind. It's a state of mind. Misty Edwards has this quote, says, life takes place behind the face, where it's me and you alone. And I love that, because you can be anywhere. I can be in the busiest intersection, on the subway, whatever, and have that secret place reality and that secret place encounter. Now, do I have my preferences? Do I like my favorite candle lit, my favorite recliner, my favorite, pillow and blanket? Sure. But like, even just yesterday, I was driving back from a trip, just having this communion with the Lord, driving 70 miles an hour down the highway. And so I think it's more of a state of mind, not to be all weird with it, but,
Right.
or just a willingness. It's a willingness in our hearts to say, God, I want to meet with you right now on the highway. Will you speak to me? Will you talk to me? And just kind of, so I think demystifying it, and not having, for a lot of years, I'll be honest, Bunny, I struggled with, like, if it wasn't the perfect scenario, I would just not even try.
Yeah,
It's like, oh
you don't
man,
have the perfect mood music on, you don't have the
yeah,
perfect environment, people get hung up with those kind of things.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
So, our car can be a secret place, sitting in a busy airport. That's such a powerful story. I can just see, I've been in that places where you're in a crowd even, and you're like, God, I need to hear from you right now.
Yeah,
I need, you're really just dialoguing with the Lord. You're talking to him. He's talking to you. It's such a powerful thing. And that's what he's trying to pull us into is this constant communion with him. Now, we need some things in our culture right now. This generation is in need of some healing, of some deliverance, of some humility, of some discernment, some wisdom, and the only place to get that is running to God, Justin. And
mhm,
you bring this up so great in the book where you talk through all these biblical characters. The one that really popped out to me was John the Baptist. Probably because I really feel like Christians Engaged right now, we're a forerunner ministry. Very few people do what we do. And, connecting the prayer movement and the church mountain with the government mountain, they're like, what? You're going to have political leaders and ministry leaders on a prayer call together? Yes, we are.
mm,
But there's something to be said about us we're training up kings and priests. We're training up people to rule and reign with Christ on the earth. How does silence and solitude help us develop these character traits in this modern world? How does that produce fruit in our life?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I'll just kind of share from my own personal testimony, but also even more so what I've seen in preachers and teachers that I've known personally. I think the fruit that is produced from a stage, from behind a microphone, from behind an instrument, really is found and mine. The gold that's shared there is found way behind a closed door, way in the secret place that no one would care about what you're doing in a prayer room in Kansas City until they hear your song. And they're like, well, I have no idea what that is, but that connects me with Jesus. Until they hear your sermon, that the revelation and the Christology that just explodes, in someone's mind as they hear you speak. To me, it's all about, like, if you want to get a John the Baptist, if you want to get, if dare I say, a Jesus, a Paul, Peter, Daniel, we can go through the whole thing as I do in the book. Like, there's extended seasons in secret. I mean, I say this in the book, I think, I think it's in there, that 90% of Jesus's life was spent being completely anonymous and unknown by anyone. No one would care to TikTok or Instagram his life the first 30 years. There was not much going on. And I'm sure people wrote him off. People were like, you know what, you were talented. I've known that since you were like 13 years old, but I'm your next door neighbor. And I've watched you just waste your life dinking around in your parents' yard, building stuff. You could have been in politics. You could have gotten married. I mean, good Lord, like what's going on, right? And then he opens his mouth. The father opens his mouth when he's 30 years old and said, hey, I'm super, super excited about the choices you've made for the past 30 years. Now let's have some fun the next 3.5 years. And so I think it is everything. And biblically, it is everything. And that's the way. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to show me a prophet, a preacher, a teacher, a leader in the Bible who did not first have an extended wilderness, empty room season before they hit their public ministry. And again, like that's a message our generation desperately needs, because we see our favorite singer or preacher or whatever on YouTube, and we just want to, well, I can sing, I have the vocal cords, I want to do what they do. And I love that. I love the hunger, but it's like, you don't know the price that person paid to sing that song. Like, you don't know how long it took them, the pain that they went through, the secret places that they had to mine gold and jewels and precious stone to have that song, come forth. So to me, it is everything. I don't think you have a John the Baptist if you don't have the one
wilderness.
in the wilderness crying out.
That is so good. I mean, Jesus opens his mouth and you get the Sermon on the Mount. How does that happen, right?
Yeah.
Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the merciful. I mean, it's just amazing. And that was really his first public sermon, Really? And that came out of so much fruit from his life. Of course, he was
Yep.
Jesus, right? He was the God man, but we can learn so much from him. And I think that's what I've learned in the last few years is just going back to Jesus needed his time with the Father. He needed that
Mm-hmm.
time with the Father, and that's where he drew all of his life and everything he gave or performed or healings or deliverances or everything that we saw, resurrections through his life came from that connection with the Father. So your book is such a great practical tool, which Justin, people that know me know I'm all about the practical. Like, don't tell me what to do if we don't have practical application to our life.
Mm.
Empty Rooms, guys, is an amazing book that you can practically get the vision, what we've been talking about today, of how to walk with God. It's just a great resource. Thank you so much, Justin, for writing this book. And I pray it goes out to a lot of people. I pray that people catch the vision for prayer and solitude and silence and having that audience of one, like you talk about in this book. So you guys grab this. Justin, talk to us about how they can connect with you, how they can get your music on, oh my gosh, your worship albums are amazing. Everybody grab Justin's music, but how do they get the book? And we're going to read it in January and we're going to talk about it here with Christians Engaged. So how do they
Yeah.
grab that?
Yeah, it's on Amazon, it's on Kindle, and it's on Audible. So if you want the audiobook, and I read every single word. I'm not
Wow.
sure if you've ever done an audiobook, but it's intense. By the end of it, I was like, why did I even write this book? It's like 16 hours in the studio. I was like, wow. But yeah, so it's everywhere, on Amazon, Audible, all different places. And then follow me on Instagram, Justin Rizzo Music. Follow me on TikTok, Justin Rizzo Music, on YouTube. And yeah, the music, my music's available wherever you stream. So you can check that out as well.
Yes. Check out Justin's amazing songwriting too. It comes from a deep place, brother, and that's why God is continuing to push you forward because, that's what we need in this hour. We need people that can cut through the noise and speak right to our heart with the Holy Spirit. So thank you for doing that for the body of Christ. So thank you. Everybody grab the book, Empty Rooms, Coming Alive Through Silence, Solitude, and the Secret Place. And we will see you back here next week. Thank you so much.